All right, welcome to day two. I'm Beverly with Oasis Wealth Design Group. Here we are, our day two of our mini series on education strategies. Again, we're talking about strategic planning, not just on product based, but today we're going to talk about the actual products of the traditional approaches that people typically use. So let's dive in. I want to make this a good use of your time. Here we go. So, first and foremost, the traditional ways of thinking about financing your children's education. Number one, as I always stress to other people, is other people's money. There's plenty of ways we're going to be able to tap into other people's money that won't cost you or your future retirement savings a penny. So we're going to talk about that today. Then there's obviously the RESP, the Registered Education Savings Plan, and tax-free savings accounts. Those are the two typical accounts that people think about when traditional education planning. So let's start here. Other people's money, scholarships. There are hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars available every year from scholarships. And it's not just entry scholarships through the universities or the colleges. I encourage, especially the parents that have students in high school, that the best return on your money you're going to make right now is teaching them how to write a 200-word essay as to why they deserve a scholarship. That and getting extra community service hours. For instance, we partner with a lot of life insurance companies and even some other companies that and groups around the cities that hand out scholarships. And you just need to know where to look, and that child needs to be able to write a good 200 to 300 word essay. It's a very good return on your money, parents. And then there's OSAP, the Ontario Student Assistance Program. So OSAP is part of two ways. It's grants from the government that do not have to be repaid, and then student loans, which typically don't have to be repaid until 6 months after the students finish their school. There's a good amount of deferral time in there where there's no interest accumulated, and we can use our money in many different ways. Now, yes, I know that grants and loans are based on parents' income. So if you're in a high income earning, your student may not have access to these. However, there are some other options. For instance, like a student line of credit from a bank. Now, I want to ask you this, and I'll ask you, I think I asked you this at the last day one. Do you think it's harder for, say, a young adult to go out and get a student loan? Or is it harder to go out and have cash for down payment for a house? It's significantly harder to have cash for down payment. These student lines of credit that are offered through the bank, it's a line of credit, so you're only charged interest on what you actually use, and mom and dad can co-sign. So this is where we have a family that's in a financial positive situation in regards to the fact that they do not qualify for loans or grants. A student line of credit may be another great way for mom and dad to hold on to their savings a little bit longer in order to get a better use of their money, okay? And then there's always the student working part-time, or going through a co-op program or an apprenticeship. So we want to use every other source of other people's money before we use mom and dad's, okay? So the reality is that you may need to contribute at that point, but also don't be surprised if maybe you don't need to, if we're being very strategic about using other people's money and resources along the way. An RESP. So let's go through the ins and outs of what an RESP are. Most people have a good idea about them. I do put a word of caution out there when it comes to RESPs. I've seen a couple plans that are very fee heavy at the beginning. Now listen, I am all about paying someone for the proper service and the proper the value that they bring to the table. Do not get me wrong, but there are plenty of plans that if you look at your statements, you've actually for the first 2 or 3 years of contributing only been paying fees. And then you start to see a return. So if you have a plan like that, we found some ways around them, give us a call. Anyway, RESPs. There's no annual contribution limit, but there is a lifetime of $50,000 per student. You can invest in whatever you want. So you can invest it in high interest savings, in stocks and bonds, and mutual funds, GICs. It's tax-free growth, and it's taxable to the student when they withdraw. However, it's not the entire account is not taxable either, only portion of it. And the concept here is that when the student goes to pull the money out for education, even if they're working part-time, they're likely not in the same tax bracket as you are, so it should be relatively tax-free to low taxes on the way out. There's no guarantee on market growth, so if you choose a mutual fund, and we've seen this happen, where like in an investment environment that we are this time of spring 2020, of the corona days, if your child is going to school in September, and you had all of your RESPs in a market mutual fund, you may be sorely concerned about what the value of that fund is, and you have to start to take money out next year. So part of the thing, multiple layers of rules and regulations. So just know that an RESP comes with a lot of different handcuffs to it. But the reason why people do these RESPs is for the grant. Okay, so let's not brush over the grant. Let's talk about the grant. The grant is 20% of your annual contributions to a maximum amount with a lifetime limit of $7,200. So it's a yearly maximum, essentially $500 a year if you put your $2,500 in, and up to that $7,200 over the lifetime. So it's about 14 and a half years if you're going to put in the $2,500 per student every year. Here's an example. If you put the basic grant, if you get the basic grant, you put 20 years away of savings of $2,500 a year, you get a 4% rate of return, and you get the maximum grant. You could have $86,000 in an account by the time the kids go to school. If you don't use the money for school, you have to return the grants and the bonds to the government, and then you can roll your contributions into your own RSP. But then you need to pay taxes on the way out. So if you put 80 grand and you roll it into your RSP, when you go to take it out, you're at least going to be paying 20-30% tax on it. So you've actually lost a good chunk of your capital. And what we say at Oasis Wealth is $1 paid to taxes is 100% loss. Money used in the market can be regained. The money you pay to government and taxes can never come back to you. Okay, consider that. Here's how we typically advise using up RESPs if you really, really want to use it. Now, I caution here because I only recommend an RESP if you know that for 100%, you know you're never going to need this money. Okay, so just because of the rules and regulations around it, life is very dynamic. Life doesn't go in a straight line. So if we don't have emergency savings set up, if we don't have protection set up, if we don't have a game plan for ourselves set up, we should not be locking our money in such a restrictive account. Okay, you don't know what the kids are ultimately going to do. Now, I wish it was a case where when they were 14, 15, we could say, oh, now I know for sure they're going to school. Let's put all the money in here and let's get all the grant. It's not the case, though. You can only roll over the grant 2 years. So you can't just save it somewhere else and then at your 15 decide, yep, I'm in, let's throw it all in, get the grant. It doesn't work that way, okay? What if you need the money early in the early expensive child rearing years? I see this all the time where when we're in our 30s, there's a whole lot of other chaos going on between maternity leaves and daycare expenses and just getting used to life. We're not usually at the peak of our careers. Family has come first at this stage, and that's good, but that means the money doesn't go as far. Here's a strategic alternative if you really want to consider an RESP. I recommend someone saves into a TFSA instead, or another tax-efficient vehicle, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Every other year, move the money from a TFSA to an RESP. So you can do an internal transfer and say, I'm going to save into my TFSA every month, and every 2 years, I'm going to move it to the RESP. Why? Because you'll still get your grant because you can carry forward it 2 years. But if in that 2-year period, if you needed that money because a lot can happen with kids in 2 years, it's in a TFSA, which means you can access it tax-free, penalty-free, government-free without any concerns. So it gives you a big breathing room, but still you could take advantage of the full grant every 2 years should you choose. Okay, so there's a little bit of the rules as to the grants. The other account is obviously a tax-free savings account. Annual contributions is either 2019 number, so bear with me. In 2020, it's another $6,000, so the annual lifetime limit per person, now per person over 18, so it'd have to be a mom or dad's name, $69,500. Tax-free growth, you can invest in a variety of securities, mutual funds. Parents can withdraw it for any purpose, no penalties or taxes. If the student does not go to school, the parents can keep the money, no later taxes. And you can use dividends or growth off the account to pay for school instead of lump sum withdrawals. I'm going to show you an illustration of that tomorrow, so be sure to check in. But there's no grants, and there's no guarantee on the market growth if you're in something like a mutual fund. For a TFSA, same idea, $2,500 a year, no grant, 4% rate of return. You could have about $11,000, $12,000 less than an RESP. But what did you pick up along the way? You picked up a whole lot of freedom and control. And what I'm going to show you is the idea of letting your money sit, okay? There's a few problems with the traditional approaches. Again, if we think of life in silos of saving for events in their individual compartments, we're going to completely miss out on your maximum potential. See beyond the weeds of a silo, okay? Resources are finite. There's only so much to go around. So it's the idea of opportunity cost and the principle of the exponential curve. So I'm going to slide over to my calculator here, and I want to show you a little example. So what I want to show you is if someone were to put $2,500 a year, so this is just a plain kind of time value calculator here, 4% rate of return, you put $2,500 in, so you see your money's growing. It's growing, it's growing, it's growing. After you're 20, you're like, all right, I'm done contributing to my kids. They're on their own. I've saved money. This is assuming a tax-free savings account avenue where we have, we don't have a grant coming in, okay? So what people typically tell me is, well, I'm going to put $2,500 away for 20 years, 50 grand. That's my contribution. That's how much college is costing me. Is it though? If someone's in their 30s and they plan on retiring at 65, the reality is that they could have kept that money for themselves. And even if they didn't put another penny in after 20 years, it's worth $134,000. So it's really hard if we look at the economic lifetime picture, because your economic life doesn't stop when the kids go to school. That's a silo effect, okay? It's actually costing you well over 125, 150, depending on your rate of return, could cost you over $200,000 out of your own long-term savings. That could equate to easily $8,000, $9,000 a year of retirement income. So it's not just $50,000, okay? Thinking bigger. And this idea of the exponential curve, I want to show you what this is. Exponential curve, if anyone takes economics in school, you'll come across this idea that money starts compounding on itself later on in its years. In the first 10 years of savings, your money's just kind of sitting up. It's building a little bit, but it's not doing a lot. It's not until we get to year 20 plus, where actually the interest you're earning on your account is doing more for you than what you could put in. And when that starts to happen, that's a takeoff. That's the really exciting part. Nobody gets excited about investments down here. It's always this, ooh, I have this curve up here. When we put money into type of accounts that are single-use dollars, like an RESP, you miss out on all the backlog, all of the really exciting part of the curve. So if you're okay with knowing that that's part of the sacrifice of saving for the kids' education, that's okay. But you need to understand that these principles are working in the background. So tomorrow, day 3, and we're going to skip these for a second. We're going to go over these how maximizing traditional approaches tomorrow on day 3. Day 3, we're going to go through some strategic alternatives. How do you use these accounts more efficiently? There's 2 other type of savings avenues that we can use that you may not have thought of. So stay tuned for day 3. Look forward to seeing you there. Like, share, comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Also, just what are you doing with your kids at home? Look forward to seeing you on day 3. Have a wonderful rest of your day.